Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhne.
Hi everybody, this is Nicholas Kuhne and we've got Hersh Rephun with us today. Now, Hersh is a very interesting chap. I like to see myself as a bit of a brand guru and somebody who can give good advice, but we've got somebody here who's even at another level. You can see even on his wall he's got brand written on there. So I'm super excited to speak to somebody who's got expertise in this area. Now, Hersh has achieved success in a number of niche businesses, but was tired of struggling to convey his mission to others through a 5-year personal development journey and aided by 2 decades of professional experience with brand strategy and creative. He solved that problem. He's now a holistic brand therapist serving spiritual and conscious entrepreneurs who want to package their passions, talents, and skills into high-value personal brands that's aligned with who they are. Is it whom they are or who they are? I can never tell.
I think it's who they are, depending on the country you're in, but
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
But today we're going to talk about your book, Selling the Truth, amongst other things. So there we go. I like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can also get the pocket-sized version back here. I don't know if you can.
Yeah,
see it, but
I'll stick that into
yeah.
the shot.
But Selling the Truth, yes.
Now, Hersh, welcome.
Thank you, Nicholas. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I know this is going to be a fun interview, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I hope so. I mean, you paid enough to be on here, so may as well get your money's worth. That is a joke, everyone, just by the way. This is done out of the kindness of my heart. So one thing that I had to touch on, and very early on, because I don't want it to be sticking in the back of my head the whole time, you've got 3 film credits, and one of them has got one of my favorites, Bruce Campbell, in it. So which one is it? And tell me about Bruce Campbell before we get into anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could see why that would distract you and gnaw at you throughout the interview, because it would me as well if I read that about you. I wrote a movie called Assault on Dome 4, which is the official title. It was originally called Chase Moran, the name of the protagonist in it, who was played by Joseph Culp, whose father was Robert Culp, the famous actor Robert Culp. But in any event, Bruce plays the villain, and it's got a kind of a Die Hard in space feel to it. I originally pitched the film idea and even wrote the script as a much more kind of sophisticated sci-fi thing, but the producer was like, look, let's just simplify it. Let's make it more like Die Hard in space, and let's see what happens. And I really had fun writing it. And then when I found that Bruce Campbell was going to play that role, it was just amazing to me, because I knew that he would just bring that flavor to it. He was very sinister in it. It is very much like, an space policeman who ends up on this planet, not exactly the same situation, but there's a lot of cool stuff. It's got like biosphere stuff and hydro, kinetics and hydroponics and all these things. But ultimately, they're trying to create a prison and take the prison system and turn these people into warriors to fight on their behalf and take over the world.
You had me at Space Die Hard.
Yes, Die Hard in Space.
Die Hard in Space.
That was the idea. And so it's one of 3 credits. I have a sci-fi action credit, which is that one. I have a martial arts action military drama with Mark Dacascos, who's been in most recently in Warrior, in the TV series Warrior. Really a great guy. And I wrote that one. It's called The Base. I wrote that one. He only agreed to do the movie if I would write the script, because we had the same manager, and he had read some of my indie stuff, and he was like, yeah, the script needs to be rewritten. And so that was a rewrite. And then I have oh my God, it's funny. I have the VHS that my wife found somewhere, but I wrote one called Can It Be Love, which was released as Spring Break Sorority Babes. So if you search either one of them, you're bound to find it. And that, believe it or not, is a TNA beach comedy. And so, I mean, what more do you really need to do in the film business after that?
Space,
Space.
tits, and martial arts. I mean,
Yeah.
is that? I mean, are there any other genres that are worth
Not
working
that
on?
I'm, yeah, not that I'm aware of. I mean, and you could probably put the James Ivory one under the tits and it'd be perfectly fine. So it's real. There's only those three genres as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the reason I brought up Bruce Campbell is I've often thought that he is one of the most underrated actors in Hollywood. He must be an asshole in real life or something, but he's just wonderful. Whenever I see him, I'm filled with joy, and I think he's a marvelous actor. So that's why I had to bring that up. But let's
Yes.
talk a little bit about your background, because now you are a certified brand guru, because you do brand therapy with folks. And I really love that concept, because I feel that brand therapy is what a lot of businesses need. They don't need a brand agency. They don't need all of these other trappings, because they can get that off. ChatGPT can write you a decent brand strategy now if you're a small
Yeah.
business and things like so. But working directly with somebody and squeezing out the juice to create a wonderful brand, then they can go on and do it. But you don't need a brand strategist your entire marketing or entrepreneurial career. You need it in short spurts, like a racehorse, don't you think?
Yes, very, very true, Nicholas. A good observation, a keen one, because you need to, and my specialty is really working with individuals, whether I call it personal branding, but the fact is they may have a business, like I have my business, Yes Brand. It's not named after me, but I am the progenitor of it. I'm the face of it. I'm the person who created it. So the my audience, my clients need to bond with me on some level. And so I work with people whose businesses rely in some way, shape, or form on their audience bonding with them. And in order to be accessible and be understood and to express yourself properly on behalf of your brand or the brand, it really takes some thought and some delving a little deeper into your, inspirations and your trauma even. And I don't, you know, I, I'm not a healer. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm just a good listener with a lot of empathy and intelligent enough to know when I'm hearing bullshit so that I can say to the client, that sounds like bullshit. And I would even say that most of my clients come to me with the, the artifice already kind of peeled away. Sometimes they've gotten in the habit and they're like, "Hey, I need you to break this habit of my alpha maleness." I'm a little too alpha male. I want to lighten it up. I want to be a little more relaxed. And that's one specific need. But mostly I think they have held back this persona that they should be unleashing on the world, not because it's Thor, but because their audience needs them. The thing that they do, the service they provide is needed. And if they can just get comfortable in that skin, get really comfortable with how they're talking about themselves, how other people talk about themselves, then, they can grow. They can grow in stature, they can grow in scale, they can have higher fees, more opportunities to speak, the whole gamut depending on their goals. But they have to be able to let that loose in a playland that feels genuine.
I suppose if you think about it, your career in comedy has actually been the perfect training to be a brand strategist or to tease these themes out of folks, because I'm sure you'll be able to mention to us, but as a comedian, you've got to create your personality, you've got to understand your audience, you've got to get the right message, you've got to repeat that message, etc., etc. Maybe talk to me about how your background working at the Comedy Store, Comedy Cellar, Funny Bone, etc., has helped you you spoke about empathy. Comedians are very empathetic. So maybe talk to us a little bit about how your background has given you this different insight to other brand strategists that folks would come across.
Well, it's given me a lot. I mean, I think from the things you mentioned, one of the reasons I was always fascinated by stand-up comedy was, and this changed, but at first it was being able to do voices, accents, go behind myself and kind of present as something bigger and fearless and better, which now in retrospect, I'm like, that's what my clients go through. They're performative. They're trying to summon the confidence to really be who they are. And so to a great extent, they're maybe hiding a bit or they're holding back. So I was doing that. I was very big on stage, but I wasn't real, right? Because it was all, like doing a one-man show where I play three roles or more or whatever. Then I started realizing, you know, I have stuff to say that's just like me and you sitting here, and I could work some character into it or some dialogue or something, some dialect or something. But really, I wanted to be able to get up and speak the truth and use humor to diffuse the tension. And that is what I have learned and become expert at, is using humor or even just sensitivity, empathy, to diffuse the tension when we're relating to our audience something that's real, something that's true. And that's where selling the truth comes from, which is the notion that, all you really have to sell is the truth. You can make stuff up, you can spin stuff, you can try to be a bullshit artist, but eventually the people you're trying to reach, assuming you're trying to reach people in a real consumer relationship or a client relationship or a trust-based, a no-like trust-based relationship, then, you're going to have to come clean and be who you present yourself as.
And I
Uh,
and,
you
and I
know,
think
so
I think a lot of folks struggle with that because you touch on a point, I think, in your book as well, on trauma and how important that is to, and that's the realness again, and selling the truth. You shouldn't steer away from trauma in your story. You should bring it into your story and talk about it, because that makes it more real and people can empathize with that. And people are more interested in interesting things than everything's perfect, everything's fine.
yeah. Yeah, people are drawn to vulnerability. The same reasons that we laugh at somebody who may slip on a banana, you know, it's the vulnerability that gets us. It's something we need to share. Getting people to laugh in the face of reality, as I is just a part of being honest and managing an unmanageable world.
A good example of that now is the chap who wrote the Dilbert comics. His name is, I can't remember, oh goodness, Scott Adams. And he has a fantastic podcast or live show. And he's just said that he's got stage 4 cancer as well and will
Right.
probably die by. Which is terribly, terribly sad, but he's sort of, well, everyone has to die at some stage, and he's not making it his whole story, but it is part of the story now. It's just very interesting how the feeling it's evoked in not just myself, but in a large part of his audience, is we take him more seriously. We're more apt to listen now. We want to say, okay, well, he's going through the final stages. There must be something very interesting coming out of his story. And he's got no reason to filter, unless he wants to build legacy, but he doesn't seem to be, I mean, he's already done it. It just changes your perception of the business and the brand, and build something that will last, beyond you, so beyond your business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's terrible, terrible news to hear, but I totally get it's a coping mechanism, but it's also a way of life. So in other words, he can look at the situation and find a kind of dark humor in it. And I refer to it as light humor, because I feel like we're shining a light on the places that are dark. We're not going dark with the humor, though the reality is already dark. And it does take an agreement, I think, between the performer, speaker, author, brand, and the audience, to say, okay, we're gonna handle it like this, and I think it's a relief when people can make light of something that's happening to them. It's not us making light of his illness. It's him making light of it to make himself and us feel less scared.
Well, let's go into a slightly lighter subject now,
If you
which
insist.
is the imposter syndrome. And I love that question, because I'm sure as a comedian and as a writer, there's always that terror that they're going to find you out. And in business, it's the same thing. And maybe talk to me about how in your book you go through a bit of imposter syndrome and how to possibly not avoid it, but how to work through it.
Yeah, I think we all have it, and it's different from stage fright because I think there's a sense of excitement in stage fright. So in other words, we're a little nervous, we're going on, we know this is good or big or important, so we're kind of excited about it, but we don't want to mess it up, and we have to put out of our head, what if we mess up? Imposter syndrome is something really amazing is happening to you and you can't enjoy it because you don't believe that it's real. And what I have what I have learned is that I have to take the steps to accept the reality of what I'm accomplishing before I have to face that moment. So in other words, I have to actually feel it's like we all do with affirmations, we're saying something in the present tense, we're visualizing something in the present tense. What I used to think is that's like a wish. I am a best-selling author, that's a wish, but what you're really saying is I am that. I am that good, or I am that accomplished, or I am that person. I just haven't completed the trappings of it yet you know? So you have to get comfortable saying that so that when you get on stage, you can enjoy it because your joy is appropriate. And when you are falsely modest or they think you're great and you don't, and it's awkward for everybody. They say, "Oh, here's Nicholas. He's done this and he's done that. He's getting this and that," and you come out and you say, "Well, I don't know if I've really." Then
Oh,
they're like,
shucks.
"Yeah, aw shucks." And then if you're too self-deprecating, they're like, "Well, I don't know. I don't see, what's the big deal?" You have to sit in that confidence as early on as possible, and really experience that feeling of satisfaction, because I know from my own experience that if you withhold it from yourself, or you withhold other people from the joy of doing it, they are going to lose interest in that fight. It's not their fight.
Yeah, you've got to. I mean, I suppose it goes back to the energy in the room. People can feel, just like animals, predators can smell fear. Clients and customers can feel that same fear, and you've got to go over it. But what I have seen sometimes with imposter syndrome is that it doesn't disappear. It carries on with you throughout your life, because you go into new cycles. And then, oh, now I'm at this level. Now I've got, oh, am I good enough for this level? And I think it's a positive thing having imposter syndrome in terms of it. If you say I'm the best and you don't deliver, that's obviously a problem. But if you are constantly striving at each level that you get to be better and to be as good as your peers, that's a helpful thing.
Yeah, and you can see, the thing is, you made my point in a way, Nicholas, because if you say you could carry that through your whole life, and every time you hit a new level, you're going to be like thinking, no, now this is too much. This is too much. That's why I say, if you sit in your room, in your own space, in your very kind of internalized moment, and you really get down with the idea that anything is possible. And that this isn't like I'm so special, I'm so special, I'm so special. It's really not that. It's that I own what I'm creating. I'm not belittling what I'm doing. I'm not belittling what anybody else is doing either. I always say, in order for me to win, somebody else has to win also, because that's what it is. A win for yourself. To defeat someone else really isn't the is it really isn't the goal. Sometimes you have to be at odds with forces in the world, but that has nothing to do with winning. And so if you have in your mind that this power is connected to you, that is capable of anything, and the only thing you have to really think about is, how do I use it for good? How do I use my power for good? Just like in a superhero kind of story, then as those levels are knocked down, you actually aren't shocked by it. You're like, yeah, of course. That's what I've been working on. That's something that I've spent a lot of time and effort on, or that's something I have a knack for and I'm using it for good, you know? So, you're less likely to get up there in that moment and be like, I don't belong here, because you belong anywhere. You
But I
belong anywhere you strive to improve the environment.
But this is where your particular service comes in very useful, because there are a lot of folks thinking, I want that, but I don't know what I stand for. I don't know what my brand is. You've got a couple of great services here in your business. What is a personal brand? How important is third-party validation? A whole bunch of elements like this, which is with your consulting side.
Yeah.
So for the folks who are not necessarily in the place of getting your consulting work just yet, there is the book called Selling the Truth, which looks fantastic. And where can they get that,
Yeah.
Hersh?
Selling the Truth, a memoir with insights for life and business. And I call it a memoir because it is like a semi-memoir. I tell stories from my life, but it's not an autobiography by any means. But there's stories in it. There's fun stories in it that pertain to business. And some of them are about, stand-up comedy. Some of them are about, me being a kid and doing theater, and it's all different phases of life that have led me to want to tell, young people as well as my peers. But I wrote it with one of my sons in mind because he's an entrepreneur. And I felt like, you know, talking to someone who's a young entrepreneur and telling them, look, you don't have to be anything other than who you are, but who you are comes with all kinds of, buttons and switches and things you can do. So master your persona, master the art of being you, which sounds like a kind of a foofy self-help book, but fortunately that's not the title. But
So
master the art of being you is actually a good concept because that's what I want them to learn. And they can go to sellingthetruthbook.com. I've kept it very simple. Bless you. There you go. It causes sneezing. It's a the type. There you go. Bless you.
I'll delete that out.
You don't have to. I mean, I don't think you got any on me, but sellingthetruthbook.com. And then if you do want to work with me, consult with me, have a chat, see where you're at with your personal brand, you can go to Yes Brand Builders. And there's all kinds of fun stuff there. There's a couple of comedy clips still, and some other joyful material, podcasting stuff, podcast episodes, blog articles, things like
We
that.
didn't even touch on your podcast, but we'll leave that for another time. But a fantastic podcast as well, and that is
Thank you.
called, I have it here, not, what was it? I have to delete that as well. But you've got a fantastic Truth
Yes.
Tastes Funny. I love that.
Yes, thank you.
All your titles are great. So Selling the Truth,
Thank you.
Truth Tastes Funny, and a holistic brand therapist. So you've got it all. So I'd like to
Thank
encourage folks who'd like, and I honestly mean this, people with a comedic background really understand people, brands, audiences, and how to get the audience to love you. So Hersh, thank you so much. And I'm going to stick all of those links in the descriptions so that folks can get to it. But just to repeat that, you've got your Setting the Truth book.com, and your
Yes.
website is
Yes Brand Builders.
yesbrandbuilders.com. Hersh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Nicholas.
I really do appreciate your comments. So why not go and watch this live on YouTube, or go to my website, kuhne.no. That's KUHNE.no for more information.